Hello, my friends. This is Sandra Tarno with Sandra Tarno Art. Wanted to jump in here a minute. I am going to gesso some of my cradled panel boards. This is a 5x7, and I have four 4x6s. I'm just going to gesso this one here with you, and then I'll finish the other and let them dry. And then I'll jump back on probably tomorrow after they dry real well and finish the project. This one is where I'm going to put the painting that I did at the 5x7. And I've actually already laid it on here and creased the edges to where I want it to fit on the board. I've already sanded all of the boards, and I just use 180 fine grit, sand them real lightly. They're in good shape, but I like to make sure they're smooth. And then I just use a shaving brush to brush off the sawdust. Then I take a very damp, not very damp, lightly damp um, paper towel and rub on them. Make sure I got all the sawdust off. And then I let them dry, and that's where we are now. I've got them on my acrylic board, and I'm just going to put it on here and give it a really good coat. Now the sanding part I do outside, but I don't mind doing the gesso inside, as long as I've got everything laid down. So if it spills, it's okay. And I'm gonna do the sides as well, because I'm gonna paint the sides with acrylic. And I'm using a foam brush. And actually, if you rinse these out real well, you can reuse them. I want a really nice coat, so when I put my acrylic medium on here to glue the piece down, I want to make sure that nothing seeps through from the wood. And that is why I'm doing this, so nothing will seep through to the painting or the photographs. And the acrylic paint will adhere to the sides. Kind of hard to get the edges sometimes. And that's all there is to it. So just smooth it out. Got one more here. You can use a hair dryer to dry this gesso, but I just let mine air dry, and I think that's pretty good. Okay, I'm going to close for now, and tomorrow after I'm going to finish the other four, and tomorrow we'll go to step 2. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm back, and the gesso has dried, and what I want to do now is just paint the acrylic onto the sides and give it some time to dry. I've got my acrylic brush. I've got my number 8 Filbert Frank Clark Simply Painting Brush. I keep my watercolor and acrylic brushes separate. This is like a goat hair. Works great with acrylic. I use Amsterdam acrylics. I also use Liquitex, but the majority of mine are actually Amsterdam. And I've got the green, the black, and the pearl white that I'm going to paint. But for you, for the video, I'm just going to paint the green, which will go with this piece here. So all I'm going to do is put one coat. I dip it in water. I don't necessarily want to thin the paint. I just want it to go on real easy. Now, if it goes over the edge, that's okay. And I actually may encourage it to do that in case one of my pictures or the picture shows a little bit on the edge. You don't have to gesso the sides. You can leave them the raw wood and just seal it. And I do both, but I do like the coordinating edges. So the gesso on this birch only took about, I let it dry for about 3 hours. And it was fine. The one we're really going to have to let sit is when we put the acrylic medium on and put the painting or photograph on. You really want those to sit for about 24 hours. I also paint acrylic on NDF board, and typically I have to leave those for 24 hours. It's a slow process, but to me it's so rewarding on the outcome. Just smoothing everything out, making sure, and I'm only going to put one coat. With the gesso on there, it'll be fine. Just like to smooth everything out. Okay, so that's it. And on acrylic, always be sure and rinse your brush out immediately in water. It will harden quickly. So that's all I'm going to do. So we'll be back. I'm going to do the other 4 in the black and the pearl white for the photographs. And then the next step will be to put the acrylic medium to paste, glue the product down on the board. That will need to dry for 24 hours. Then we'll seal it and we'll be done. Thank you. Okay, I'm back, and now I am going to apply the matte gel. And what I use is Liquitex Professional Matte Gel. This is going to be our glue that will hold our painting to the cradle wood panel. And I just use a spatula I'm going to apply this on the top. You want to make sure you get it all the way to the sides. The sides and the corner, the edges in the corner, of course, to make sure the product the painting, not the product, glues to the wood. You got to work pretty quickly because it dries pretty quickly, but make sure you got everything covered real good. And now I'm going to take my painting, and I've already got it creased to where I want to apply it. So I'm just going to use my creases to apply it to the board. Now I have my brayer, and I want to roll this, excuse me, to get all the gel medium to the edges. Now you can use a rolling pin, like what you use to make biscuits. You can use your hand. You just want to make sure you get all that gel medium to the edges. And I like to start in the middle and roll out. And then you can kind of take your hand and feel if there's any bubbles, which there are none. That brayer works really well. Now I want to turn this over. And one thing you want to look at is if any of that gel medium is squished out from under the painting. Go ahead and wipe that off. But that's good because that kept all the bubbles out from underneath the as you can tell, my acrylic board, I've used it this whole time. Each time I finish a process, I always take it to the kitchen and get all the acrylic or gesso, I always say it wrong, off. Now look, you can see how much is on this one we got to wipe off. And all I do is just get a wet paper towel and start there, and a little bit of water, and start rubbing, and it just comes off on the acrylic board. And then if I have some, I think that's about it. If I have some hard parts to get off, what I do is get one of those magic erasers and get it off with that. Now you can see where this says here, the acrylic medium's on there, but it will dry clear. Okay, so we have to let this dry, and I can also tell, although it is where I seamed it, it looks a little uneven, but that's the place that I chose when I did this. So what I want to do now is put some weight on this. I could put books. You could use canned food, a skillet and books, weights, but you want to weight this down for 24 hours. Now the acrylic took an hour to dry. The gesso took, I did 2 or 3 hours, but probably within an hour or two it would have been dry. But this acrylic medium with weight on top definitely needs to wait 24 hours. So then that leaves in the morning, and we will trim the edges then and seal it one coat. We'll be done. Okay, thank you, and I will see you in the morning. Okay, I'm back the next day. This stayed all night and dried, and it is adhered to the paper. Now, if you remember, it was hanging over the edges. What I did is I took my rubber mat, turned it over, got a craft knife, a razor blade knife, and I just went down the edge and cut off the edges. And sometimes you have to do it twice to make it actually make the cut because of the thickness of the paper. And then when I finished, there was a little bit of fuzzies or rough edges, and I took my fine grit um, sanding paper and just sanded the edges. You push down or this or the length of the board, but don't ever um, sand up because you're just going to um, release that acrylic medium. Now, I did have to touch up a little bit of the um, green borders because I had some scratches from sanding, and I just let it dry for about 30 minutes and we're ready to wax. So it's signed, it's sealed, it's adhered to the board, the sides are done. So I'm using Gamblin cold wax medium, and this can be used in oil painting, but it can also be used as a varnish. It has resin in it, and the longer it dries, the harder the seal gets. It makes it waterproof, and I know it's scary to put a wax on top of a watercolor. You think it is just going to come off, but I promise you it will not. So, very thin layer. And the reason I wear gloves, it's not that this, you want to go in circles also. It's not because it's bad for you, it's mainly my nails. I don't want to have to redo my nails every time I work with these mediums. So it's just easier for me to wear gloves. So as you're going in circles, you want to cover the whole painting. And as you can tell, nothing's coming off on my rag. And you'll kind of feel some resistance where it hasn't been put down. I also do the sides. Again, nothing on my rag. So what I like to do is take my glove and just run it across here. Make sure everything's evenly coated. And you can kind of hold it up and see if it's completely coated. This is going to take about 3 to 4 hours to dry. What I like to do is let it dry about 3 to 4 hours and then I buff it. Now, by doing that, you are going to get a shinier surface. It's not going to be matte. Which I don't want. I don't want a matte surface. Now, if you wanted matte, you could put this on right now. Let it dry for overnight. Don't buff it, and it'll stay as a matte surface. But I just kind of like that little semi-gloss shine, and just thin layer, most importantly. And I just want to make sure one more time that I've got everything. So this has resin in it, which that's what's going to make it hard and make it a varnish, make it waterproof. Okay. And you should use a lint-free rag. Okay, that is it. So we're going to let this dry for about 3 hours. I'm going to buff it, and I promise you this project is done. I want to talk about times. Every part of the country is different. So what takes me 24 hours may only take you 12. You kind of get to know your environment as to how long it takes. Like I acryliced the sides again. They were dry within 30 minutes. I gave it a little bit longer. Um, I just let all mine sit overnight as far as the acrylic medium gluing the piece down. I actually have four 4x6s under these books here that I did that I'm letting dry, and then all I need to do with them is wax the top. They're photographs that I took of my nature photography that I put on the 4x6 panels. I'll probably show you at the end of this video, if they get done in time, what it looks like when I do the photographs. But take a craft knife, just trim it down, hold it straight, turn it over, hold it straight. You're going to have a little bit of loose edges. You can sand that off with fine paper, brushing down. Don't ever brush up to pull the painting off of the panel board. And then these could be hung with just a framing nail in the wall, and you don't need any sawtooth, you don't need any wire. You could stand them up on your desk, a lot of different uses. So it's just a different way. It does take longer than, of course, matting and framing, but sometimes just for a different look, I think it's pretty cool. So I'm going to come back and buff it, and hopefully by then my photographs will be ready and I can show you the end results. Thank you so much. Good morning, my friends. I wanted to jump on and show you the finished product. This is the 5x7 that I glued to the 5x7 panel board. I used the cold wax. Um, I actually put 2 coats on this, and it's the next day. So I put one on, waited 2 or 3 hours, rubbed it off, put another one on, and buffed it out, and it really turned out really nice. I'm really happy with it. I do want to mention, I don't think I said this earlier, when I cut this painting to fit this um, panel, you need to put it on a piece of cardboard or a rubber mat when you use your craft knife, of course. I think when I videoed it, it was on a piece of paper, and I didn't want you to think that's how I cut it. I used my rubber mat. But these are the 4x6s that I glue my photographic prints to panel boards with acrylic medium. And these 4 I actually did wax, and I painted the edges. That's black. This is a pearl white. These were taken from my butterfly garden last year. I signed my prints, and I actually use these to attach to um, and make greeting cards out of, and note cards. So these are these 2 that I cold waxed. Here's the last 2. I did 4 of them. So I did these 4 plus the 5x7. This is a hummingbird from my garden uh, last year. And this is a picture of the leaves changing at Lake DeGray State Park in Arkansas on one of our RV adventures. So, like I said, I waxed these 4, and after I finished, I thought I did not need to do that. And the reason being is when I get my photographic prints made with MPICs, I have a luster coating put on them. Number 1, UV protection. Number 2, they don't show fingerprints, which work great for my note cards. So I pulled one of my other prints out to lay it here beside, and you can tell it is identical to the waxed piece. So for me in the future, I will not be waxing my photographic prints, only my watercolors. And I don't know why I didn't think of it. So I was kind of double dipping on protecting these, and then there was no need. Now, if you don't get luster coating, then I would recommend doing the cold wax, and I just, rubbed it in a circle, let it dry, buffed it off. I only did 1 coat on these. So that's it. And I thank you so much.